Good evening, Mist, and to anyone that is watching this video. My name is Conan, and this will be my first video evaluation of the second term, or basically in the subject of Maths for You, and the date of 25th of October 2021. In this video evaluation, I'll be covering a total of three questions that is all related to polynomial questions. Now, it might look rushed, but I need to apologize first because, well, I just recently moved to Canada and I haven't set things in order. Not to mention my laptop's having a bunch of problems. So, sorry in advance for anything that is, well, miscalculated or basically just look choppy. So, with that out of the way, we can instantly jump into the first question. So, in the first question, it asks us to take the given polynomial equation, as you see on the screen right now, and factor it and give the state of the x-intercept of the fx. So in here, we can do a few things, or we need to do a few things in order to get the things that we need. One of them is basically through trial and error, since we basically want to know on what is the factor for the equation of fx. You can either set the equation above equals to 0, so you can get individual x that can lead to 0 for the equation, or you can also do trial and error. Since we have no idea in which one's which, I'll just do trial and error, and I luckily found the first one, and that is the factor of fx is going to be x minus 1. If we put x minus 1, that'll give us into f open bracket 1, since the factor that we had is x minus 1. The number in front of the x will be changed from negative to positive and positive to negative, if so is the case. Since we already had one of the factors, we can now simply divide them, or basically substitute them to get the rest of the factor. Now, as you see in your screen right now, it will be number 1 with a weird sort of like not finished rectangle. Now this we will need to actually divide them. Now, in the box, we shall put the coefficient, or basically the number that is in front, the respective constant, basically x. So from the equation, you can see that this will be 2, this will be minus 1, and minus 4, and plus 3, respectively, as you can see from the equation of fx above. Now, in order for us to solve this properly, we will take the number that is in front and basically add them to the number that we had before and times with the number that we have on the side. So let's say we have 2. We have no numbers on below, so that means we still got 2. Now 2 times 1, that will still equals to 2. So moving on to this one, or hold on, let me just show it to be a bit easier. Since we got 2 in this one, that means we add them, and this will be 1. Right? So 1 later on times 1, that will still be 1. So then after that, that will be minus 4 plus 1, and that will be minus 3. Minus 3 times 1, and that will still be minus 3. Taking away all the answer, and that will give us into 2, 1, and negative 3 respectively. So putting that into an actual equation and following the coefficient that is given on top above, that will give us into equation of 2x squared plus x and minus 3. This is going to be the factor that will be, or that is going to be needed to times by x minus 1, or the factor that we had before, in order for us to achieve the expanded version of fx. So safely say that the factor of fx is going to be x minus 1 times 2x squared plus x minus 3. If you want to cross-check, you can just simply expand the factors itself and see if it actually will be equal to fx on the left side. Now, onwards to the x-intercept, and this will be a bit more simpler than what we just did. So in the x-intercept, we basically just need to solve x for 0. So taking the factors that we have over here, that will give us into an x-intercept of minus 1.5 and 1. That's number 1 done, and we can instantly move on to number 2 and number 3. I'll tackle both of these because they are somewhat related, and I have an easier way of explaining them in this kind of state. So, in number 2, it asks us to state the domain, the degree, the y-intercept, and the end behavior of fx. And number 3 asks us to graph the equation, basically. So, let's start with a simple one, the domain. Now, since we know the domain, or basically how the graph is going to turn out, we can simply take out that the domain is going to be x is equals to any real numbers. Since the graph is not going to be a straight line, and it sure is going to be a bit wavy, since it have x power by 2 and greater in the equation. The degree, however, we can simply take by all the powers that the coefficient, or basically the x have. So in this case, the x have 2x powered by 3, we take the 3, x minus x powered by 2, we take 2, and minus 4x, and we just take x alone. And that will give us a degree of 6. Now, the y-intercept simply put as if the x is equals to 0, or any point that crosses the y-axis. Now to do this, we can just simply put x is equals to 0, and that will give us a number of 3. So putting it into actual coordination, or actual interpretation for the graph, y-intercept will be equal to 0, 3. Now, to scratch the graph as well as tackle, or basically prove all our solution before, we can simply follow this link that I have provided, as you can see on the graph above, or video above, sorry. Now, in here, what you see right now is the graph, the red one, by the way, is the fx, or the function of x, basically. And each point have already been marked like this. So we can cross-check in here if we need to, and I'll just prove that each answer actually corresponds to each, or each answer actually fits into place. So the first one, the factor that I had will be x minus 1 times 2x squared plus x minus 3. Now we check this. Whoops, where's it? Ah, there it is. So if we check this, you can see that the blue graph over here matches to the graph above, which is the red one, as you can see. This means that this equation of the blue graph is a factor of the red one. Now, what's next? It also asks us to ask about the domain, or basically the x-intercept, and then the y-intercept. So, for the y-intercept, it is 0, 3. And when I take it, as you can see, this will be marked on the graph for both of these. Actually, I'll just untick the factor one so you can see it a bit easier. This is the y-intercept that is implemented on fx. Now, the x-intercept will be marked on 2 points, since there are 2 factors that we have. That will be at minus 1.5 and 1, as you can see on the graph, and as you can see on the problem that I've solved before. Now, the last question after I graphed is to determine the behavior, or basically the end behavior of the graph. So with the help of the graph, as you can see from above, it goes from the start towards, or basically upwards, and then towards the middle part it will drop down, and eventually it's go back up. So the behavior, or basically the whole behavior that we see right now, is going to be up, down, up. If we're asking for the end behavior, well, I think it's up, since the graph keeps going upwards since then. Okay, so that was the last question, and that will conclude my video evaluation 1 for the 25th of October 2021. Thank you all for listening, and once again, I am sorry for anything that I have miscalculated, forgot to put into the video, or basically just screw up in general.